Good morning, everybody. I'm an addict. My name's Jackie. First, I want to thank this convention committee for allowing me another opportunity to serve Narcotics Anonymous. And most of all, I want to thank God for giving me a purpose in life. I'm nervous, but I'm real overwhelmed, man. I don't know, just recently, I celebrated another anniversary of life of recovery in this fellowship. And every time I do, I get this real feeling of memory and this feeling of gratitude from where I've come from, where I am today. And that's a real blessing because I know the longer I stay around, I have long periods of time that I forget. I don't want to forget. I need to remember. Somebody told me the other day, I was sharing at a meeting in my area, and someone told me, they said that they could see that God was inside of me. And I thought about that all the way home. I had a pretty long drive home from this meeting, and I cried most of the way home because I'm real grateful that I have a God in my life today. I'm real grateful that God could take somebody like me, a dope fiend like me, a whore like me, a thief and a liar like me, and turn me into somebody that is a miracle. Create a miracle in a person like me. And I come to conventions and I come to meetings and I look around and I see pain in people's faces and I see hope in people's faces. I see memories in people's faces. I see hugs. I see people isolating. I see people laughing, having a good time. And I still get real overwhelmed by the miracle. And I know that's the theme of this convention, is that the miracle continues. And I need to remember that. I need to remember that I'm not a recovered addict. I'm a recovering addict. I'm still real sick, and I still need a lot of work, and I need to grow. I'm in the middle of another fourth step. Anybody that's ever been there knows that just about everything that goes on in your life, for some reason, when you're in the middle of a fourth, I'm somewhere in there, middle. I never know when it's going to end. So I just say I'm somewhere in the middle. I've been writing on this one probably longer than I did the first one, which lets me know the longer that I'm around, the sicker that I know I am. I don't know that I'm sicker than I was. I'm just realizing how sick I am and how much work I need. And I was outside at the store, and they had this sweatshirt, and I really wanted this sweatshirt really bad, and they let me try it on, and it just wouldn't get over this all the way, you know. Just wouldn't fit, and I knew as soon as I washed it, it was going to shrink, so I didn't buy it. But on the front of it was at the end of the road. And every time I read this thing, man, like I just get like real emotional. It gets me real in touch with where I've been, where I am, and today I have some hope about where I'm going. I was at a meeting in my area not too long ago, and I've been sharing about this recently, and it's still real close in my heart, and I want to share it with you guys. I'm the kind of person that at the end of the road for me, the end of my active addiction, I didn't remember a lot of things. I had a whole lot of period that was a big blank. And I would come to meetings and I would hear people say things like their last run and their last high and their last this and their last that. And I would feel kind of left out because I had months that was like this blank state. I was in some kind of daze. And I truly believe that God only lets us remember and experience what we can handle. He doesn't give us any more than what we can handle or what we can remember. And I went into a meeting and I heard a young lady sharing about playing Russian roulette at the end of her addiction. And for some reason, I never did that. I mean, I never took a gun and put bullets in it and spun it around, and I never did that. And when I used to hear people share that, I used to think that they were being overly dramatic, you know. And as addicts, I don't know about you guys, but I could have won a lot of Oscars in my day, you know, and, so I know and plus I'm a Leo, so I'm like real dramatic and, you know, real dramatic. But for some reason at this particular meeting when she shared this, I sat there and this memory came to me. And this memory of this period that was kind of like near the end of my active using. At the end for me, you have to understand the end for all of us. I don't think addicts have a bottom. I think we have the highest tolerance for pain for any living creature on the face of this earth. I think we just hit the same bottom over and over so many times that we get tired of hitting it. I just got tired of getting tired of hitting the same bottom. Other people were standing outside of me, looking at me and crying. My family was crying and saying, what is it going to take? And at some point, I had to ask, what is it going to take? And at the end, I really believed that the only way out for me was going to be death, literal death. I really believed that I had experienced every kind of physical pain, emotional. I had no spiritual pain because I had no spirituality. I didn't have a God in my life anymore. And I didn't know what the end was going to be. But near the very end, and I think it was close for me at this point, I kind of accepted that the insanity for me wasn't just repeating the same things over and over. I actually measured my insanity by how many holes I put in my body every day. How many times I attempted to get drugs into my body every day. And it was almost like the pain was some kind of self-inflicted punishment for all the harm and hurt I had done myself and everybody else. So I really didn't feel it anymore. It became a way of life for me. And at the end, I had heard Ron J. share one time about strange things happening on the way to recovery, on the road to recovery. And I sat there and I remembered a lot of things that happened for me on my way to this final hitting of this bottom. And this one particular day, I had my same ritual. My life had become a ritual, a ritual. I had no purpose, no reason for getting up other than going through this ritual. The drugs weren't working anymore. The ritual wasn't working anymore. Nothing was feeling good, even for a moment. That moment of feeling okay with yourself, nothing was working anymore. But my body and my mind were so used to going through this ritual that I got up and went through this ritual another day. And this particular place that I used to go and buy drugs was like a madhouse. I was hooked on the excitement. I was hooked on the adrenaline rushing through my body. I was hooked on being probably the only Caucasian person that was crazy enough to go there. They spoke a language that I didn't understand. They spoke words that all of us understood: drugs, police, and money. And I knew how to get in there, and I knew how to get out of there, and I really thought I had become one of those greatest drug addict survivors. That in spite of all the odds against me, that for some reason I always managed to get in, get what I needed, and get out. And this particular day, it just didn't happen that way. And this particular day, I ended up getting shot at about $10 worth of cocaine. And the only thing I was angry about was I couldn't go back down to this particular corner. I didn't care that somebody had set me up. I didn't care that somebody tried to take something from me. I was angry because I could not go down to this particular area to buy these particular drugs. And what happened from that point on was, and today I understand, okay, that it was just the journey on the end of this road, the last few miles that I had to travel. I started buying drugs that were cut with a lot of things like wall plaster and all different kind of things. And the ritual for me got to the point where I had to sit on the floor in my bedroom or my bathroom, totally naked, crying and praying, blood running all over my body, and just wondering, when is this going to end? It was just the ritual that I was addicted to at the end. And this particular day, you know how after you cop, like your step gets a little faster, and for some reason, I don't care if you've eaten or slept for days, but you can walk a little faster, and you got this pep in your step, and you're on your way. And this particular day, man, there was no pep in my step. And I was on my way home, and I stood at the bottom of my stairs, and I looked up these stairs, and I was like, damn, one more time I have to go up these fucking stairs. One more time I have to go through this ritual. One more time. When is this going to end? And I got upstairs and I got undressed, and the reason I had to sit on the floor was because at the end, when I would get these particular chemicals in my body would go through these involuntary spasms. I would see halves of things, and my body would start trembling. And so the good dope fiend that I am, I figured the way I would control that was I might as well sit on the floor, since I was going to fall on the floor anyway. And that's what I did. And it took me hours. And I got up off the floor, and for some reason I felt like this has got to end. And I got my old man's 38 out of the closet, and I wrote a note. And the only thing I wrote on this note was, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry I hurt you. That's what I wrote on this note. And I took this gun, and Ray said that we have some things in common, and I have 2 Dobermans that I absolutely adore. And I've had these 2 dogs since they were little puppies. And I don't equate them with people's children, but God hasn't blessed me with any children in my life. And they were like my kids, man. And like they were the only reason that I had for going home. The only reason. I took these dogs with me everywhere. To cops, sat outside shooting galleries, every place. They were part of my identity. They were part of everything. I didn't have a name anymore. I was just Sam from 20th New York's woman, the little white girl that drives around 2 Dobermans. And that became part of the thing that I didn't want to let go. When I got into recovery, it was the only thing that I felt made me special. But I loved these 2 animals. They were the only things that I felt at the end even wanted to be around me, because they didn't care how long I'd been gone, what I'd done. They just wanted to be around me. They didn't get fed half the time. They didn't get run half the time. They didn't get washed half the time, but they just didn't care. They had the most unconditional love for me, other than my mom, than any living creature ever had. And I took these 2 dogs down in the basement, and my plan was that I was going to kill both of them and then kill myself. Because I really felt like they were the only things I couldn't leave behind for someone else to care for. And I took them down in the basement, and I looked in their faces, and for some reason, I knew that they just weren't that stupid. You know, that once I shot one of them, the other one was either going to run or bite my leg or something, you know. And in this moment of, I'll call it sanity, but in this moment of God-given sanity, of God-given something to look into their trusting faces, I knew I couldn't kill them. And my love for them was so selfish, I couldn't leave them behind. So needless to say, I'm standing here today, I didn't blow my brains out, and I certainly didn't kill them. And, you know, and I continued to use probably for a couple more months. And I was driven into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous by someone else that cared enough about me, cared a whole lot about me, a methadone counselor that just saw something left in me. Because I was one of those kind of people that would go into counseling every day, sit there and cry the blues, and couldn't make it past the pawn shop after I left there. I couldn't not use. There was a part of me that wanted to use, a part of me that didn't want to use, and I could not stop using. And I think it took me all those years, and it took me to hit that bottom one more time to realize that I really couldn't use, and I couldn't figure out a good way to use. Because that had been my problem for a long, long time. I had always tried to figure out a better way to whore, a better way to boost, a better way to talk, a better way to use, a better way of doing something to control this. And I finally accepted that I couldn't do that. And I came into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, and that was the greatest miracle in itself, because not long after then, the obsession to use was removed. And I know that there's not one person in these rooms, not all of you put together in these rooms as individuals, that could remove the obsession for this drug addict to use. I knew that there had to be something much greater than all of us put together. And I heard people talk about a spirituality. And I wanted to know what that was. And what really surprised me, at about 6 or 7 months clean, I had somebody come and ask me, how do you get this spirituality? And I was like, I know they're not asking me. I mean, I'm still a whore in the rooms. I'm still stealing on my job. I'm still doing these things. Like, how could they ask me, where do you get this from? Somewhere, I was doing something a little bit different. And people saw that I cared enough about myself at some point to not use. And that I cared enough to come into meetings and try to encourage other people not to use. That for an addict like me not to use for 6 months was beyond anybody's wildest dreams. I know my family for a long time questioned whether I was still using. On my first anniversary, I questioned whether I had used. I mean, I had lied so much and had had so many drug dreams that I really had to look in the mirror and say, okay, now you know you used once in this year, and you probably just lied so good you convinced yourself. And that wasn't the case. The real miracle is what happened afterwards. And today I understand that this is a journey. I understand that this fellowship has a primary purpose, and that's what we're all here for today, is to carry the message to the addict that still suffers. And as an addict, when I stand up to this podium, that is my primary purpose. That's not my primary purpose in life. Our basic text talks about becoming a productive member of society. I didn't get clean just to be a member of Narcotics Anonymous. I come into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous to learn how to live, and it's taken me this many years, and being almost 43 years old, to even have a desire to grow up. Today, my primary reason for wanting to recover is that I want to grow up. And my primary purpose in life is to work my way back to God. My primary purpose in life today is to understand that there's a journey much greater than walking through these steps. I have sponsees who want to jump in the nuke and get this microwave recovery. They want to run through the steps so they can go into meetings and share about the steps. I'm glad I had people in my life when I first came around to tell me that it took you this long to get here. Slow down. You don't want to rush through this like you did everything else. And I was still on a fourth step when a lot of other people were somewhere else. And I had to accept that maybe I was a little sicker in some areas than others. Maybe I wasn't so sick in some areas like other people were. But that it was all going to be in God's time, not my time, not my sponsor's time, not the women I sponsor's time. I had one of my sponsees call me the other day and say, you're sponsoring these other people, and I don't like that you're sponsoring these other people. They just want to know your business. And I told her, I said, God brings people into my life, and I can't call you up to get your okay on it. That I've brought a lot of people into my life, but I know today when God brings people into my life. And he brings people into my life to help me to grow up. I know that if I come in here and tell you that I'm not nervous or I have no ego involved in this, I'm lying. Anybody that's ever stood up here and spoke knows that they get nervous. And it's because I have this part of me that wants you to really like me and accept me. And when I prayed before we left our room this morning, I prayed and I told my best friend, I said, I have to always get honest with God. And I asked him to remove the ego, but I know it's there. And it's because I want somebody to ask me to share at another meeting. So I just asked him to help me not make a real fool out of myself. Because I've done that at meetings. And I sit in here and I listen to people holler during the readings and they have a good time. And I watch other people get upset by it, and that's okay too. And, and this gentleman that's doing the taping came up and gave me a hug and he said, remember to have a good time. And I thanked him for that. See, because I get to taking this so serious that I forget that life is about being okay and being happy and smiling. I walked around for years with this frown on my face that scared everybody away from me. I have friends in recovery today. When I see them, they always have this long look on their face, and I'm like, man, why are you doing this? What is this all about if all you can ever do is have this long look on your face? Today, I am in the worst situation financially that I've ever been in my recovery. And, I'm not alone. Okay, good. All right. And it's because I'm living the American dream. I wrote post-dated checks for the first time in my recovery so they won't come get my car. And I found myself on the way to work one day, this addict inside of me saying, what is the use of all this? I'm going to work, I'm making more money than I ever made legally in my life, and I still don't have enough. I still have a case of the not enoughs. The more money I make, the more I need, the more I spend, the more I make, the more I need. And I'm riding past, and I bought this new car, and it used to give me this little ego boost. I'd ride past those big store windows and look at myself in the car and say, yeah, you look bad in this car. And now I have to work so hard and so long, I don't even have time to wash the car. And I started to get real out of place with what was important. My brother passed away last year. My mom passed away this year. And what I learned from that was when you have a death of a loved one, it puts the bullshit in its proper perspective. Things that seem so important just aren't. And I was on the way to Reading one day from work, and it's like I have to go out sometimes to visit people at their houses, and there's this big sign, this big billboard, and it was like, man, today I accept that God talks to me through all ways. And there was this sign, and it says, my greatest treasure is God's love for me. And I sat there and I said, man, thank you. See, I get to thinking that this red Camaro is like what's important to me. I get to thinking that if they come get my stereo or TV, I won't be able to walk in the rooms. I won't be able to hold my head up. If I have to ride the SEPTA system again in Philadelphia, I won't be able to tell people I'm ashamed I lost my car. I had myself already riding SEPTA and robbed because I don't know how to ride SEPTA anymore in my recovery. And I looked at this sign and I knew it brought everything right back to basic for me. That the greatest treasure I have is God's love for me. Even greater, well, not even greater for me, but what goes along for that with me is that I know he loves me today. There was a long, long time that I really believed that there was no way he could love me and that nobody else could. And when I talk about being a miracle, I don't say that with my head swelled up. I say that in total humility. I mean, if you can say it and then still mean it. I say that with total awe, that a person who started out a good, pretty little kid and grew up to be one of the lowest of the low, who every moral, every standard that they ever had left, and what was sick was that I was glad it was gone. Because as long as I didn't have any standards or any rules or any morals to follow, I was wide open to do whatever I wanted to do. And I justified it by the fact that I was an addict. I spent a lot of years trying to figure out why I was an addict, whose fault it was that I was an addict, because this addict was convinced that if I could answer those questions, I could do something about it. And those years that I spent in psychiatrist's office, social worker's office, methadone counselor's office, with all of them helping me trying to find out why and who, kept me real sick. And it took coming into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous to hear over and over and over that consistency, that atmosphere of recovery that we get here, to hear somebody tell me that it doesn't matter why or who, it doesn't matter where you came from. It matters at some point only that you accept that you're an addict and you go on from there. And that's a miracle that happened for me. That I was able to accept that. I was able to stop looking at the fact that my father was a violent alcoholic. I was able to stop looking at the fact that my mother allowed him to be that sick. I was able to stop looking at how sick my family was, how poor we were, how out of place we always were. Because those things gave me justification for using. And I came in here and people told me it doesn't matter. But what they gave me along with that, with the it doesn't matter, was that we're going to love you anyway. And that's just what they did. They loved me anyway. Because when I got in here, I was physically dirty, I was physically beat, nothing attractive about me, and I wanted to be. I wanted to be that person that I had been before I started using. And I used to be in treatment facilities, and I'd hear people say, people that didn't know about the recovery process, they would say things like, I just want to go back to being like how I was before I started using. See, I understand today that I couldn't go back to that. I had to start from where I was and go on from there. I was the kind of woman that came into these rooms wanting to be loved so bad, and the only way I knew was from a physical thing. That instant gratification thing. Please let me know that you still think I'm attractive. Please let me know that you don't think I'm this dope fiend whore. Please let me know that I'm okay with you. And I was the kind of person that came into the rooms, and I was watching last night, and I was watching like how some of the girls were dressed, and I was trying not to get judgmental. I was trying not to get jealous, first of all. And and I saw this young lady with this short dress, and my first instinct was like, man, that's just too much. And my second instinct was, wow, I wish I could still wear something like that, But I came in here the kind of woman who my whole purpose for being here was for the dances Friday and Saturday night. And my apartment was the place where everybody came to get dressed for the dances. I lived for the dances, the NA dances. And I convinced myself that this is enough. This is good enough. And it was enough at the beginning. It was enough to know I could go somewhere and not use drugs. And it was also a place for me to see who I could take home. And that's just for me. It was a place for me to see who I could take home. I needed to know that I was okay. It was the only way I knew how to find that out. And I was the kind of person that would hug guys and stick my tongue in their ear at meetings, tell them that they smelled good, and say stuff to them like, I'll take you someplace you've never been before. And thank God that there were brothers in the rooms who were recovering enough to say things back like, it must be the moon, because that's the only place I've never been. I know that it's not only a miracle that I stopped using chemicals, it's a miracle that I stopped using myself and other people. That's the true miracle today. Because I know once I got clean, I really kind of felt like I had a license to do anything else. I wanted respect, and yet I didn't know how to give it. I wanted you to talk to me like I was a woman, not a whore, not a dope fiend anymore. And I didn't know how to do that. And I had good men and good women in this program teach me how to do that. And a lot of it came through pain. A lot of it came through rejection. A lot of it came from humiliation. A lot of it came just from making mistakes. And the lessons that I learned from, because mistakes are hard, man. I was telling Al, thank you for the 10th step last night, because I'm one of those kind of people that, like, the words, I'm sorry, oh, God, they get choked, like, right here. I'm wrong seems to get choked even harder. And I didn't know how to tell people I'm sorry. I didn't know how to tell people I'm wrong. And one of the things I got in touch with in my first fourth was my pride. And I knew my pride is what kept me out there a lot of times for a long time. And I came in here and people told me, it's okay that so-and-so rejected you. Don't worry about it. You know, we love you. There's more to you than just that. You just keep coming back. We love you. And I kept coming back. And 90 days clean, I had a man in the room hit me in my face. In a meeting. Well, after the meeting ended. And my pride told me that I wanted to call back home to North Philly and have him wiped off the face of the earth. My pride told me that. And what I had to pray for at 90 days clean in a strange town where I didn't know a lot of people, where I had to go to start recovering, I just didn't want to use. It was such an old feeling and an old tape, and that feeling of I must have deserved it, the self-degradation, and yet the revenge that I wanted, that it's a miracle that I didn't use. It's a miracle I didn't leave and go back to where I'd come from. And about 3 weeks later, when the man I had been in a relationship with for a long time had found out about it and called me, thank God the mistake he made, he asked me, what meetings does he go to? Now, if he'd asked me where does he live, I might have told him. But when he said, what meetings does he go to, something just didn't feel right. Something just didn't feel like I could tell him, yeah, go to such and such meeting and kill this guy. It just didn't feel right. And not too long after then, this guy came to me in tears and apologized and told me that he loved me. And we've been really good friends ever since then. We've been really good friends. Not too long after that, he went out. Almost 2 years clean, he went out. And I didn't feel good about that. I didn't feel happy about that. I didn't feel like, yeah, that's what he gets for doing that. I hurt for him to go back out. I'm an addict. I've been there. I've been part of the living dead for a long, long time. Us people that just took up space for a long, long time with no purpose in life, no reason for being alive. Like, you ever ask yourself, why do they even let me stay here? Why does he let me still walk around? All those years that I used, for some reason, I felt like if I lived through it, there was going to be some answer at the end. Today, when somebody asks me to come share at a meeting, I take that commitment real serious. I'm also understanding that for a lot of us in this fellowship that dedicate yourself to service, the people that put on this convention and work, the sacrifice that goes on with that. At some point, you almost have to make a decision. What am I going to give up in order to do this? I had a sponsee call me the other day, and for women, it seems like a little harder. Maybe I'm wrong, but more of us are staying around longer now. You know? When I first came around, there wasn't that many that were sticking and staying. You know, and I used to say it's because we have these extra special problems. You know, I don't think we have extra special problems. I think some of us are just extra specially more sicker than other people. Some of us need extra special help. And sometimes some of us need help outside these rooms. I don't tell any of my sponsees that all the answers are in here. In my addiction, my life was limited to like a 5-block radius. I don't intend to limit myself to anything today. The opportunities that I have in life today far exceed the rooms in Narcotics Anonymous. They far exceed the streets of North Philadelphia. They far exceed any place I can travel. The ideas and the feelings I have far go past anything I ever dreamed I would ever have in my life. I don't think there's nothing I can do today. Nothing I can't do today. I don't think there's any dream that I have today that's not worth going after and either changing my mind, turning back and making another dream, or succeeding at that. I know that for me, for a long time, I also felt that I wasn't supposed to succeed. And any anniversary I came up on, I'd start feeling real sick. I don't really deserve this. Something's going to happen. I'm probably going to use. That doomsday syndrome, waiting for the other shoe to fall all the time. It's the first time I've been driving my car without car insurance because it was due on Tuesday and I don't get paid till Thursday. So I had to park my car this weekend and ask somebody else to ride with them. But the whole thought I had for 2 days when I was driving it was, I've been driving now for 5 years clean, nothing's ever happened. The minute I don't have any car insurance, somebody's going to run into me. It scared me enough after those 2 days that I parked this sucker and rode with somebody else. You know? I have a job that's like real, kind of like in a dangerous area. I work in public housing, and projects are full of crime and drugs and pain and suffering. And I have a lot of people that are scared for me to work at this job. I'm not scared. Most of them know I'm recovering. I'm not scared. I'm not telling you I'll walk around there at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, I believe that my higher power protects me. I don't care where I go, but he also gives me enough sense to get off the tracks when the train's coming. I don't walk through the projects at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. First of all, I have no business being there. And they know I have no business being there. You know, but I believe that he protects me no matter where I go. When I got up from the table to come up here, my best friend Gail gave me a hug, and she said, your mom would be proud of you. And a lot of you might know that my mom passed away in February. And I know that in my lifetime, I will never find a person who loved me as much as she did. But I know that today, the fact that I'm growing up means I used to think that I was just a bad chooser of friends, that I always picked people who were going to hurt me, other sick people. And I used to think that all I had to do was sit back and wait for God to choose men or friends to be in my life. And since my mom passed away, the growing up that I've had to go through, more like in a short period of time than I ever had, has showed me something different. And this might just be me, but it showed me that I'm becoming a better chooser. I'm growing up and I'm starting to know what's important. I'm starting to believe that I deserve people in my life who treat me good. I'm starting to believe that I don't have to be punished anymore for the things that I've done. I'm starting to believe that other people forgive me. My boyfriend and I had this argument yesterday before I got ready to go, and I apologized to him because I had lied to him like 4 days before. And it was like a little lie, and it was a lie because I didn't want him to know something, and it was a lie. And it took me 4 days to get the courage to tell him, and it was eating me up. And each day I found a reason. Well, he's going fishing overnight, I can't tell him now. And well, I'm getting ready, he's going to this men's day in Baltimore, I can't tell him now. And I can't, finally out of nowhere, we're both going somewhere, so I don't know where that came from. I told him yesterday, I said, I have to tell you something. I told you this lie, and I went on to explain to him, and he seemed okay with it, and then he took me through this thing, man, like explaining to me, well, once you understand your addiction, you'll get in touch with your spirituality. And I'm sitting there like biting my hand, you know, and I'm like, okay, now you know about amends, and sometimes people just don't know how to accept it. And I'm sitting there tapping my fingers and looking at him, and finally I said, are you finished? And he said, yeah. I got up and I left. And I came back, right, and I said to him, I'll be glad when you get to a ninth step. Because he's a little younger in recovery than I am. And I said, I'll be glad when you get to a ninth step. And he said, why? And I said, because I want to see you when you make amends to people and they don't believe you. And you make amends to people and they don't want to hear that. They want to know what you want from them. And he said, that sounds really vindictive, Jackie. I said, no, I just want to watch the growing process that you go through. Man, I had to take a look at the fact that it bothered me that he couldn't be this gracious. Didn't he understand how humble I was getting? I mean, I didn't have to be honest with him and tell him. I had changed the code on my answering service so he couldn't get my messages because I knew my ex-husband was calling about some craziness, and I just didn't want him to know all this craziness. And he knew I changed it, and I said, no, I didn't change it. That's been the same what it was. And it took me 4 days to figure out why I lied about it. This man doesn't beat me physically. There's no fear of any retribution other than these lectures I have to listen to, you know. But the fear just wasn't justified. And what I found out in those 4 days was my behavior was exactly like the things I did in my addiction. It always had to do about money. I lived with somebody for 15 years who sold drugs for a living. And I stole his money every day. And every day he'd come in and tell me there's money missing. I'd say, you must have miscounted. And he'd kick my ass, and I still wouldn't admit it. And he'd say things like, Jackie, if you just admit, you know. And I said, but I didn't. And I lied so much and so long that I convinced myself that it was him and that it wasn't me. And those 4 days after I told this lie to this person, I've never lied to this person since we've been together, I felt exactly like I did when I was using. Exactly like I did when I was using. And so I knew I had to go and make some kind of amends, because today I just don't know where the progression of this disease will take me. I used to believe that my disease waited for me and sat outside on the hood of my car while I was in here getting fed, and he was out there doing calisthenics and just waiting for me to come out. Today I believe that sometimes he comes in the rooms and sits here and learns all the right words and will use all the right words to take me back out. Sometimes I have to just protect my own personal recovery with a lot of vigilance. I have to question the feelings that I have. I have to trust that God's going to let me know when something's not right. There's certain times during the month when and it's not just women that relate to this, because most of the men in this room either live with women or in a relationship with women or somebody. But there's a time every month when I turn into this whole different person. And it's like I can't justify the behavior, the shortcoming, but I have to accept, okay, that there's chemical changes that my body goes through. And the beauty of it is today that I'm grateful I'm a woman. There's years that I didn't want to be one. It just looked like it would be better to be a guy. Today I'm grateful just for who and what I am. But for this one short week every month, I go into this whole different stage. Very few principles acting in my life. And I have a little bitch that hooks up with the little addict. And somewhere they procreate, and usually what happens is the man that's in my life, they'll get together and say, get him. It's his fault, get him. He said good morning and he didn't mean it, get him. And then I have to say I'm sorry. I have to say this is what I'm going through. And I'm just grateful because part of my prayer today is something that I felt would never be part of my prayers at the end of the day. I thank God for making me just who I am. I thank him for allowing me. I thank him for allowing me for everything that I've gone through in my life, because it's all added up to be the person that I am today. I thank him for the pain. I thank him for the things he's removed from my life. A lot of the things I couldn't remove on my own. And just to sum up, they said that this meeting ends at 1 o'clock, and it's like 12:35. And I learned when I shared at the Philadelphia Convention, he said something back, can you share for an hour and 45 minutes? And I was like, sure. Captive audience, I could do that, you know. After about an hour, I got real tired. I got drained, real tired. And I learned from that man that when I get tired, it's time to shut up. It's time to shut up. It's not important what I say. It's only important with what God does with it. And today I'm just grateful that he chose and asked me to come here, that you all asked me to come here, that you allowed this crazy, sick addict to be part of your lives, and that you love me so much, because the people that I was born with in my family are people I love dearly, and they've all moved away and left me, you know? And my mom's gone, and my brother's gone. All these people are gone, you know, and I get really scared. And last week I told my friend, I said, I feel like I'm running this race that I'm constantly losing. And I didn't know how else to explain it. And I didn't really know what I was feeling myself. And I went home, and I took a shower, and I prayed, and I got in bed. And when I was in bed, I started crying because I realized that my greatest fear is the fear of growing up, of being responsible for myself. Trust in some of the decisions that I make. Accepting the responsibility for the decisions I make that turn out wrong. That growing up is my primary purpose. Sharing at this meeting is not my primary purpose. Growing up, getting closer to God, because ultimately that's where we're all going. We forget that sometimes. And I don't know if that's a religious belief or a spiritual belief, but I really believe that the journey that I'm on is back to him. I'm growing older every day. That means I'm getting closer to my body dying every day. People don't want to hear that. You know, we're so used to now like having this gift of life, this gift of recovery, this joy, dances, conventions, meetings, parties, hugs, love, good jobs, material things, all these things that we have that for me sometimes I forget that where I'm headed is back to Him. I want to be right when I get there. That little song, like God's watching us from a distance. Next business meeting you're in, remember that. Especially next area service meeting, remember that. 3 o'clock this afternoon when the people that have worked so hard for this convention to be so beautiful, I mean, and this is just beautiful. This is just beautiful, man. I try to imagine this many addicts like in a hit house or in a shooting gallery. I know for one thing I wouldn't have my back to any of you. And today I can come in and sit with my back to people. I mean, most meetings in my area, I'll go out and watch my pocketbook. There's some I go, I sit on my pocketbook, you know. But I mean, that's just real. That's just real. We don't all come in here ready to change or do anything. But we're in here for some reason. Something brought us in. Something drove us in. So even if somebody doesn't know how to say, keep coming back, or I love you, chances are they're here because they had nowhere else to go, and they need somebody to love them. And if you see somebody standing in the corner today, I mean, the convention's just about over now, but if you see somebody standing in the corner by themselves, go over and give them a hug and tell them your name. Tell them that you love them. My first sponsor told me to surround me with people who told me I was beautiful and growing, and it's worked. Because today I believe that about me. And when there's nobody around to tell me, I look in the mirror and tell myself I'm bad. You know? Yeah. I want to wish everybody a really safe trip home. Please drive safely home wherever you're going. Say a prayer before you go. And thanks for letting me be part of this convention.